Oh, we live.
Oh, we live.
Oh, we here. We here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the highly anticipated, the long overdue, and honestly, quite frankly, much needed lore stream, in which today we're going to be breaking down all your burning questions about the lore. We're going to be talking about Coach. We're going to be talking about the East Saga, the West Saga. We're going to talk about it all. And of course, I can't do this without the lore queen herself, Kirsten, joining me to break down the lore as she does the amazing write-ups over on the Grossi Posse subreddit. She gathered all of your questions. She put them all in an Excel spreadsheet. And now we're here to talk about the lore. Kirsten, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm super duper excited for this. So.
Listen, I'm ready. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to roll. Because as you know, and there is a bit of a disconnect because as you know, like after the end of a lore-rific episode, whether it be the West or the East or the Coach, the mods usually have a little forum of themselves and they're talking about and dissecting episodes. And I still get questions like, wait a minute, who's Wildflower's dad? Like I still get those questions every now and then. Like I get like, wait a minute, is Coach, part of the cinematic universe? We get all those questions. We get all of them. But we're here today to kind of answer a lot of those questions. We're going to talk about, maybe we'll give us some hints of what's going to be happening in the future, but we're going to be talking about it all. We're going to be talking about it all. But I think before we get into anything, there's one thing we need to do. And that is the intro. That is the intro. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to pack but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Don't worry, Harold, I won't break you today. Grossi, and here we are. That's it. Hold on to your Harolds, ladies and gentlemen, because it's the lore stream.
Here.
So the way that we thought that this would work, the way that this was going to be going, we've been planning this for quite some time, and a lot of thought has gone into the exact format. Exactly 5 whole minutes of thought has gone into that. But basically what's going to happen is, obviously, we got people in the chat. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. If you got a burning question, we'll try to get to it. We'll talk about it. But there is a lot of questions that we gathered on the Twitters and the Discord. And, of course, LQ has her own questions that she's going to be coming up with. And we're going to break it down and talk about the lore.
Yes.
Sound good? Sound good?
Sound good.
All right. First question. What is the meaning of life?
42.
Yep. Done.
All right, done.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
Exactly. But I just wanted to preface with something. Obviously, there's going to be a bunch of spoilers. So if you don't want anything spoiled via me or anything, it's gone. I don't know. There it is. Yeah, there's spoilers. So be careful.
Come on, that's a good question. That's a good question. We're going to talk about that. Don't you worry. Every other character from the East and West Saga represents something. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. First of all, I like that last line. Real quick, I'll actually answer this. Super quick. I don't know if this is a question of yours, because I've seen this question a couple times. So it's like, does every character represent some type of like emotion or something like that? The answer is no. Not every character does. There's some specific characters, especially introduced via Coach, that do. But just because they're in the East and West Saga doesn't necessarily mean they represent like some big time emotion. So there we go. Boom! Right off the start. Bam!
Mm-hmm.
Done.
And obviously, like one of the biggest questions that I got actually a couple times during all of this is, do you have to watch Coach to understand the NFC, AFC sagas that have been coming out over the past few years?
I think it's a great question. So the easy answer is no. Like, you don't have to. I mean, like, you can start with the East Saga and then watch it. And honestly, like, there won't be anything that'll be out of place for you until, like, you see, like, Tome. Like, you'll see him, you'll see Chamas, and you'll be like, you won't know who these people are. But it doesn't, like, overarchingly impact the story. And I would argue it's the same thing with the West. Like, there's glimpses of, like, Chamas. So, like, for example, like, why Lewis is waiting at the end and Chamas is not showing up if you watch Coach. So, no, I created them in that way specifically because if it was like, well, you need to go watch Coach in order to do this, ain't nobody gonna have any idea what's going on. I mean, people do watch it and have no idea what's going on. So it's a matter of like, if you are able to watch Coach, it will give you a lot of context and background and will make things make a lot more sense. But I wouldn't say it's like necessary viewing. Not
right.
Entirely.
Right.
Oh, Chris wants to know, will Danny have any character development later? You will see Danny in the future. Yes. Yes, you will see Danny in the future. Yes. Yes.
That's a good question.
Yes. That's good.
So let's just start all the way at the beginning. Coach season 1. Very beginning.
Coach season 1. What a time.
It's like 3 years ago at this point, which is wild.
Yep.
So obviously throughout Coach season 1, Tom gets a call from the Packers and he's coaching Madden and trying to be this big hotshot coach.
Yep.
But while he's going along, he realizes that there's things happening in his mind that he doesn't really understand.
Yep.
So one of these things is Junior. He is Tom's son in a sort. So does Tom actually know that like Junior is his son, but he isn't? Like, I'm phrasing this weirdly, but
yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, so basically, so you're talking more about like, because while Coach season 1 has gone on, the only introduction to Junior had been during the bedtime stories, right?
Right.
So you had these bedtime stories in which like Tom was talking to like Junior, which was kind of like this father surrogate weird thing, like relationship that was going on. So you learn in season 2, you learn in season 2 that he's Joy. Yeah, because you learn that near the end. So to already start off like deeply, it's not necessarily that it's seen as like a father-son thing. It's more of like that would be like childhood Tom. So like that would be like the innocence, the joy, like that kind of stuff. And when he found out that he wasn't real, like visiting that joy and visiting that innocence, like it wasn't real, it was all like made up, that kind of broke him a bit. So like that's going forward in like the first season finale of Coach, where he realizes that like Tome tells him like, not real, that whole entire exchange. That's kind of him coming to grips with like, you've been seeing this thing and like, oh, like that's joy, happiness, childhood innocence, what have you. And then like, it's not really there. So you're kind of just talking to an empty bed.
Yeah, we're getting deep already. Where's Joe? Oh, well, yeah. Where's Joe?
Unless you're talking about Joe Mama, but yeah, no, Joe's dead.
He's dead. He's dead.
He done dead.
I think.
He done dead.
So speaking of the Coach season 1 finale, so obviously a lot happened during that time span. But one of the things that happened was Tome and Junior just straight up disappeared for a little bit. Obviously, it wasn't permanent in any sense, but they just disappeared. Where did they go? Did they just fizzle out of existence, or what happened there? So
yeah, that's a great question. So it's not even that they fizzled out of existence, and this is kind of sort of answered in the Coach season 2 premiere. So Tom, because they're both doing 2 different things. Mm-hmm. So Tom can only see Junior in the premiere when he's drinking, right? Yeah. So he's only able to like connect to that innocence, connect to that joy, what have you, like when he's consuming alcohol. And so it's a matter of Junior becomes harder to find because it becomes harder for Tom to find his joy and happiness because of all the things that are happening around him. So it's not that they necessarily like go out of existence. They don't go back in the crawl space or anything like that. It's just a matter of like, they're tougher to see. Right. So it's the same thing. You can see it with like Chamas, how Chamas is fear. Chamas like pops up in like very sometimes inopportune times, but you see glimpses of him. Right. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about Chamas in a second, but like as that emotion is like stronger and like more prevalent, they're more visible, right? Okay. So when it comes to Tome and like you find out who he is in Coach season 3, it's very evident why he goes away because of all the things that happen in Coach season 1, because like that goes away too. So it's a matter of like, they're not going like out of nowhere. It's a matter of like, they're unable to see them, or Tom is or unable to see them, on a daily basis.
Gotcha. That makes so much sense.
Cool.
Boom. It's going to be a lot of that.
It's a lot more sadness or depression or both. More depression. Yeah, more. I would say more depression, but like those feelings are like interlinked, I would say. But yeah, it would definitely be more depression. There's going to be a lot more of him in Coach season 4. Like a lot more. They have barely gotten started when Faded. They have barely gotten started.
The answer is yes.
Mint nailed it.
So Coach Season 1 comes to an end, and obviously a lot happens between those two seasons. But I was just curious, how much did you have planned out at the end of Coach Season 1? Like, how far was more like how deep did it go?
Yeah. So the thing is, like, Coach is basically like its own thing in itself, because I would say, like, if you want to try to like understand the lore, it would be go back to Coach, like, and because that's where it all started. If you want to understand like the lore of the channel, like the heart of it, it's Coach. And because it was like separate as its own entity, I would say I had the ending of season 3 planned out by the time Coach season 1 was over. And I mean, I've said this a couple times, like there was a point where Coach season 3 was going to be the end of it. Like I was going to be like the whole kit and caboodle. It wasn't until I started doing the East Saga, because I started that during the summer, and then obviously that picked up into what it became, that I made a conscious decision to incorporate Coach into it, because it kind of just made sense in a way that like what the crawl space represented and all that great stuff. So it's not that I have like all of the East West figured out, because a lot of that's a week to week thing. Like I don't know how a lot of it's going to go, but like certain characters, like, you know, their story arc, I like where I want them to go. Like, so Captain Finn Oakley, for example, like he's a huge piece of like the lore. You're going to see him again in Coach season 4. But like I knew like what his story was from beginning to end, how he was going to get there, you know, during the West Saga. That was all up to the games and like how it went. So yeah, I would say for like 3 seasons though. Like, I mean, I got that. And then when I realized I was going to be doing more, because it was going to be tied in with like the East and the West, I mean, I already have next season planned out in my head, like how that's going to end. You're going to start to see in Coach season 4, you're going to start to see the pieces of an end game. Like you're going to start to see like, okay, like this is where we're heading, and this is where we're going. And it's gonna be a bumpy ride to get there, but it's fine.
Boy,
it's fine. Will Lewis get a redemption arc? You will see a lot more of Lewis, because with Lewis, so this is going to the West Saga, because probably like the number one comment I got was, because the Rams won the Super Bowl, his story feels unfinished, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, because this season ended, like the show ended before the Super Bowl, because you know Lenny had to go and lose. So there was that one. But 2, it was intentional that his story is unfinished, because you look at it and it was kind of a finale for multiple characters. But if you kind of look at it, a lot of those character stories are unfinished. You could argue like Lenny's is kind of done. You know, Lenny's going to show up again. But like you're going to argue like Lenny's is kind of done, because he's just like, we chill and we vibe and we're going to go and like travel and all that great stuff. Grandpa Cardinals obviously is going to be done. Jerry and Gavin, I have some plans for them as well. But like they're pseudo done, right? Like they're off like doing their own thing. The stories that are going to continue are Mac, Breck, right? You're looking at Lewis. On top of that, Captain Finn Oakley, like those guys, their stories aren't done yet, and those are going to continue, whether it's going to be in Coach or whether it's going to be, you know, in future series.
All right.
Well, we got one more question. So why didn't we time out Vapor, who's out in the last episode? Yeah, that's a mod question. Where were you? Tome is the spawn of Satan always. Yes. He's the same age as Little Nicky. And LQ, I mean, listen, I don't control what Kirsten's going to do. She just kills whatever character she wants. She sends me the whole thing. Which Tom is speaking to us right now. Wouldn't you like to know? I was telling Kirsten right before, I was like, I should have worn the Grossi Posse shirt just because of the implications.
Well, technically, if you want to be specific, it is ambition.
Technically.
But this isn't lore yet. So
Yet.
It's
Sorry,
very
Harold.
important.
Yes.
So moving on to Coach season 2, obviously Tom's going through some stuff. But he doesn't really know exactly what. So I was just curious about how much does Tom know about the crawl space? Like, is he aware that he can give up control to somebody else? Like,
no, he has no idea. So yeah, like let's go like beginning. So because a lot of like some of the questions that come up with this. So this guy right here, like the crawl space, which is kind of, it's in season 1, it plays a big role in season 2, etc. Like, what is the crawl space? So the crawl space is literally Tom's mind, right? And when I say Tom too, like that's Coach Tom, just to be very clear. Like that's Coach Tom. So that's Tom's mind. And so with that, when somebody, or I shouldn't say somebody, when an emotion or what have you, so you take Junior, you take Tome, you take Chamas, you take Lamy, when any of those are out here, when they're not in the crawl space, they're out in the real world. Right. So those are the feelings that he is grappling with on a daily basis. Those are the ones that are very prominent and are potentially taking control. You see this, right? Tom is very fearful in Coach season 2. He's like kind of depressed, like trying to like doing this weird thing in season 3 where he's trying to figure it out. Like there's a ton of different implications when an emotion is out and about. And if you are ever at a point where there's just one emotion out there and that's it, that's what's like leading the charge. That's that's the face that like, Tom has on, and that's what he's going. So it could be ambition, depression, etc. Yeah. So just to like clarify that, that's what the question is. I figure we go like way back.
Yeah.
At a super secret alliance, they still hate each other despite that. Yeah, they do though. They do. Or do they? Hi. Inject.
I inject.
We're chilling. Watch the Raiders and the Tuck rule happen. Yes, it's true. He became captain after that. That is what pushed him. Drop his taxi after Springsteen is stupid. No. Is he stupid a little bit? But like, I mean, who isn't? But no, Springsteen is not stupidity.
That's a great question.
It is. Springsteen's just dumb. That's it. That's Kirsten. That's LQ. The one who's doing all the write-ups. She's always in the chat. There she is.
I do things. Now you see me. So in the beginning of the Coach season 2 finale, Tome and Junior are having a conversation about Chalmers, and like he's out there and they know he's coming, or at least they think he's coming. How much do they know about the crawl space compared to say Chalmers or Ambition?
They know about it really well because they've been in the crawl space before, right? Okay. I mean, like they theoretically, like when you're out, you can come and go as you please. Right. Mm-hmm. And so like, again, there's consequences to that. If there's something else out here that, you're like, you know what, I'm not going to let you back out. Right. So when it comes to Tome and Junior, they have a good relationship. And so because they have a good, and this is like, all right, this is like deep stuff. So this is during bedtime stories. So like when people always ask me like about Junior and Tome, because like Junior says like Tome is his real daddy. Yeah. Well, like that makes sense because like joy and love are very much interconnected. So because of that, that's why they have that relationship. So when Tome like would go back into the crawl space, like to see Linda or do whatever the hell Tome does in there, right? Junior could let him back out if he wanted to, and vice versa. Okay. So they know about the crawl space a good amount. So that's why they have an idea of like, Chalmers is, they don't know everything about it, because there's lots of layers, because there's some who have like never been to the void, for example. But yeah, no, they have a good idea of at least like what goes on in there. And those conversations that they have, you have to look at it from the point of, if you're Junior and Tome, you're basically just trying to do what's best for Tom and like trying to make him as happy as humanly possible, because that's what your job is. That's what your emotion is. So, they're grappling and trying to figure that out. And when Coach season 2 starts, a wrench gets thrown into that, because not only is it not working with Tom, but you also have this entity that's also coming into the fold that's going to make things a million times harder.
Right. All right. So during that time, Chalmers comes out and he does things.
What a legend.
Legend. Namely killing Tome and Junior. Putting it bluntly. So he shoved them back in their crawl space. And where did they go?
It's a great question. So they're in the crawl space. So the thing is that there's not a specific answer to that. And what I mean by that is that they go back into Tom's mind. You don't really have complete control of where you pop up, though. Because like if you're thinking about it of like entering somebody's, this is like weird statement, but like if you think about like entering somebody's mind, right? And you're like, there's a ton of different rooms that they could possibly pop up in. And then like once they get there, they know their bearings and they could potentially like, go around. But it's also like enormous, right? Because it's basically the limit of like what your imagination is, of like what it could be. And new things can pop up that they've never seen before. I mean, like you had in the East finale, Tome pops up in, Bruce and Springsteen's house. And he's like, I don't know who these people are. So, and it makes sense because like some of those people were brand new, and like some of the things weren't there before. So, it depends on where they go. Tome obviously is like going to most likely find Linda, at times like that. But when he dies the first time and like goes back inside, he's going and chilling with Linda. And then Junior, he did other things. That like the specific place of like where he's gonna be, you'll it'll be alluded to where he was.
Okay.
So there'll be some circling back that'll be go there. Amazing plot of one of the characters. Oh, wait for a character to flip the script. They're like, wait a minute, I found it. Got it.
Not in the script.
18 base characters outside the North represent an emotion. So great question. Here, I'm going to put this out of the way. The characters you're going to see in the NFC North are not the ones from Coach.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see those. They're different characters. So the NFC North technically doesn't represent emotions. Now, they are tied to teams, the ones that we were talking about, but they're not going to be the ones that are going to be represented in the North Saga, which is going to come out in 2 years. So when it comes to representing emotion, though, there are some that are tied. Let me put it this way. There's some that are evolving, I should say, are evolving into a potential emotion or can evolve into an emotion. And because there will be characters that you will see that will become more prominent and potentially take over certain roles.
Ooh.
Put it that way.
All right. You're just making me more excited for all of this already. We're barely in this. So that happened. So Chalmers is outside and he's causing havoc in Tom's mind. He's causing him to go through crazy. I mean, the night happens, which is a fan favorite for some people.
For some people.
For some people. So Chalmers is doing all these things, but like, what are Chalmers' powers in like a sense? Like, we see him possessing Tom and we see him doing all these things, but like, what's the limit of what he can do?
It's a great question. So like, basically, Chalmers is fear, right? So. Yeah. For people who don't even know who Chalmers is, because there's some people out there, right? Like, he's the guy in the orange polo. He's also the guy in the Bears jersey that pops up on the beach during the West finale and also the Coach season 3 finale. So Chalmers is the embodiment of fear. And so the way that I've always kind of went with his rules is he can do whatever fear can do to people. So that is like hallucinate. He can take over people. Like, fear can possess you. Like, fear can take over your body. Now, there's a big difference here because Tome and Junior never really tried to possess Tom. Like, that they're kind of just like working together and like making sure that like he's a functional human being. Sean's like, nah. Like, Chalmers sees what has happened and goes, I want things to change. I want things to be different, and I'm going to do it in a certain way that I think is going to be best for Tom. And again, like, he has his own motivations there. But, I mean, he is able to travel wherever he wants. Obviously, the hallucinations are definitely there, taking the embodiment of other people. That's kind of Chalmers' gig. Like, and basically, if you, like, I always talk about this psychological study, that if you tell people there is going to be a meteor shower, right? And you go out and you sit there and they're like, oh yeah, there was meteors. People will say that they saw meteors, even though they didn't see meteors. And they'll actually think that they saw meteors. And like, that is basically Chalmers in a way, right? So like, if he's taken over multiple different people and he's playing on those fears, whether it was like taking the embodiment of Carl, for example, whether it was like Jade back then, like, he can kind of just do all that.
Gotcha.
Names of characters for the South or North would be too spoilery. Not yet. Not yet. Soon. Into the Grossiverse. It's always into the Grossiverse. Always. How did Springsteen survive his trip to the beach? Well, he never died. So it's a great question, Luke. He didn't die, so he was in a coma, right? Got hit by a car, by Frederick, but he got hit by a car, and then he was in a coma. So, I mean, he just didn't die. Now, if you die, it's going to be significantly harder to come back from the beach. So the simple way, he woke up. Like, that's the simple way. Not everyone has that luxury.
Gotcha.
So George, because nailed it. Some people.
Yeah. Hi, Luke. So Tom's going through all this, and he seems to realize that what he's experiencing really isn't normal. Did he just now realize that like these hallucinations aren't like quote unquote normal?
Yes, because I mean, you think about it. If you have a certain normal that you're used to and get acclimated to, like, yeah, like that's the. Let me put it this way: it's normal when things are going well, right? It's normal when it's like, hey, everything is like there's an equilibrium, like there's a function, like everybody's like, okay, we're surviving. When things start to get crazier and worse, that's when it becomes a problem. And so for Chalmers, like when he comes out in season 2, that's his total goal. Like he wants to push Tom like to the very limits where he gets so desperate that he's willing to either give up control, go into the crawl space, like do all these things. And that's why he legitimately terrorizes him and then tries to mentally break him because he's trying to do all of those things. So theoretically, you know, there's the Madden match, right, between Chamas and Tom. And like theoretically, like Tom could be like, no, like I'm not gonna do this anyway. like we're not gonna play. But like that throughout that season, he is pushed so much, and like he has nothing else. Like the joy is gone, right? Jade is gone, everything is gone, like Tome is gone, everybody's gone, and it's just him and Chamas. Yeah. So like there's nothing else to fall back on. Like there's nothing to really like keep him in check. They're like, no, like this is your life now. And that's why like personally one of my favorite episodes is the interview, because like he lays it out. He lays it out for him and he's like, this is why you need me. Like this is why, like this is everything you've done wrong. This is like where you've gone wrong in your life. I can fix this. I can make this better. I can keep you safe.
Right.
So yes, I would have. I had a whole Bruce and Springsteen. I had a whole. There was a really dark ending for that in which Bruce and Springsteen both would have died. Yeah. Hello, I'm Bruce. I'm Springsteen. Love it.
So speaking of that episode, Chamas is doing all these things, and at one point, Tom opens the door to try to get out, and we see this black nothingness that is the void. For those who don't know, can you explain what the void is and what it represents?
Yes, absolutely. So the void is basically, the way that I've always thought about it was like repression, right? So like it's the stuff that you like push way down, like to not think about, to repress it, you know, to ignore it, that kind of stuff. And everybody does that, right? So whether it is ambition, you know, whether it is fear, you know, because fear has been there too. It's like, you know, that's like being brave, right? It's kind of like pushing that down, ignoring it, and like going forward. Yeah. So the void is where that happens in like the mind of trying to forget things, trying to repress things. Now, there are going to be certain embodiments that are going to be there. As we saw, ambition has been there. Depression has been there. You saw fear that was there. So during the interview scene, when he opens the door, that's Chamas. So Chamas literally is like showing him the void. Like he literally is just being like, here you go, bud. Like that's what's awaiting you. So it's an attempt to just continue to like break Tom, but at the same time, you also have to think Chamas was in the void too. So he's kind of he's like pissed. So like he's pretty upset.
Just a little bit.
There's that anger that is there as well. That it's like dude, like you shouldn't have been repressing it, because like let's take a huge step back. Nobody should be repressing any of that stuff, right? Like that stuff should be processed. That stuff should like coexist. And Tom hasn't been doing that. And so this is it finally like coming back to bite him.
Gotcha. So speaking of which, so Chamas made this appear. How? Like how is the entrance to the void like in the real world?
So it's not the entrance to the void. So what it is, it's like Tom's, let me put it this way. It's Tom's hallucination of the void that Chamas is creating. Yes. So I was going to show it a couple times in Coach season 3. I was going to, but I avoided it intentionally because reasons. But anyway, when it comes to that, it's not like if Tom actually stepped out, like he would have, oh my God, he would have disappeared, gone to the void. It was a way to keep Tom in the room, right? Because you also have to think about the way that entire episode goes, right? Chamas wants to have this interview. Chamas wants to sit down and talk to Tom. Tom has no interest in doing it, right? No. They're staring at each other for hours. You know, he's cursing him out. He hates him so much. He doesn't want to have this conversation. It keeps him in the room. So it like basically creates that idea that you can't run from your fear right now. Like you actually have to sit down and face it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Got it.
So,
got Con Man with a question.
Yeah.
Made you want to do Coach? Was your way of dealing with something difficult that happened to you or your family? No, not really. I mean, Coach is just like a very, it's not like obviously like it's not autobiographical, but like it's an exaggerated version of things. And at the same time, like I just wanted to tell like a personal different story. And so like there's aspects obviously like real life there, like you see like home footage and like all that great stuff. Like you see there are aspects that are in there. But it was just something different that I wanted to do. And I thought it would be an interesting story. And here we are, you know, years later, just
it's clearly interesting.
Just doing that. So Jonathan, it's not necessarily based off Survivor, but like there was a reality show component of it, and the intention of that, like the Survivor aspect of it, is because Chalmers is the one who set all that up, and he was just hoping the results would be there would be only one person left, and everyone else would be killed. So there's no real reference for the East Saga. That was just like the story that was being told. Yeah. Well, that I can't answer this one.
I don't want to, Kevin. I don't want to.
It's a great question, though.
It's a great question. So, so Chalmers, he's terrorizing Tom. And obviously, the finale comes along, and he's very, very close to getting Tom into that crawl space. Like he's inches away. Then at one point, Tome Jr. pop back out.
Yes.
So did Chalmers think that he actually killed them, or did he know that he was actually alive?
Yes. Yeah. They knew that he was like they showed because he can't do anything to them when they're out here. The only thing that they could do is send them back in. Right. So, and there from anything, you know, when you're in, things can happen. And that's what like sets off season 3, because season 2, Tom and Tome are going in there literally to kill Chalmers. Like that's what the idea is. Like he's terrible. He's going to wreak havoc. We need to take care of him.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of a way of disposing them, because it was like, all right, Tom's going out, and then that's it. Door closed. I'm the only one that's going to be left standing. And of course, that's just not how it goes, because the door gets left open.
Right.
So, yeah, okay, that's assimilated into the gang. Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. I'm very excited for the Bills Mafia stuff. I'm very excited for Frederick. I'm very, 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 very excited.
Called it, by the way.
Nailed it. Why does Chalmers want to kill the fan aspects? Because again, they're a distraction. For Chalmers, it's funny because Ambition and Chalmers have like similar, I won't say plans, but like they have like similar goals. But Chalmers is basically, and this gets alluded to a lot in season 3, Chalmers wants it in a very messed up way, wants to keep Tom safe. He wants to keep him from harm. Well, look at it this way. How you may remain safe. I mean, especially like in the world of COVID and all that, like all the things, you walk outside and get hit by a bus, right? He's like bubble wrap, like never go out, never do anything. Don't rely on other people. Like just sit here, be isolated. Nothing bad can happen to you then, right? That would be fear taking over completely. So for Chalmers, he's looking at all of these other aspects and he's like, these are distractions for Tom. Like he shouldn't be focusing on these. He shouldn't be thinking about these. He wants to be the only thing left that is really on Tom's mind, because if he can't do it outside, if he does it inside then, and he's able to take over completely inside, well, I mean, maybe that's just as good as taking over on the outside. That makes sense. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
So Coach Season 2 comes to an end, and then thus the saga is born. Over the summer, there's a few episodes here and there, and they were hilarious. I forgot how hilarious they were until I watched them a few days ago. So at the finale of that little set of summer episodes, it is revealed that Bruce and Springsteen are not related, and Carl somehow knew. How did he know?
Well, so that's the thing. Carl is like with the family before Bruce is, right? So like Carl is with them. So he knows because like they've been together before. But it is like kind of this like family secret that they don't really want to get out, because at this point, like what good would it do? But Carl's just kind of a dick. So like he'll just kind of like he'll just like kind of say it at one point. But no, like Carl just, he's been around the family, he's part of the family. And in the beginning, he literally says like, I'm not related to any of you. He's like, I'm not, like they call him like a cousin or whatever. Yeah. But like they literally like, he's like, I don't want any relation to you. But that's his whole character arc. Like I will probably one of, if not my most favorite character arc that I've ever done is Carl, because Carl goes like from this total a-hole, like he wants nothing to do with his family, to the point where he's literally willing to die for that family. And like that's his like whole arc. So like he goes from being like a cold, vindictive a-hole to kind of like growing as a human being. But he knew because he was just around. And then like when Bruce comes into the fold, like, things occur.
Well, then I'm curious, how did Frederick not know then? Did he just forget?
Yeah. So when it comes to Frederick himself, you have to think about it this way too. Like Frederick's entire story is is like he just gets bullied.
Yeah.
So like it just becomes like such a part of his like everyday like this is my job. Like I just get my ass kicked. Like he's young. I like the way that I picture is Carl is a bit older than all of them. So like he has a little bit more of a memory of it. And like Frederick and like Springsteen and stuff like they're around the same age and same thing with Bruce.
Gotcha.
So, all the Bills fans, no, you have not met them before. Just Frederick. Just Frederick.
Yeah.
No, Frederick. Is the video canon? Yeah. I mean, because Carl doesn't actually pop up, so it's okay.
Yeah. Carl's dead. I'm sorry for anybody who thought he was alive. He's gone.
Well, I also want to explain that to folks too, because that is a question I see a lot, and I don't know if this is something you were planning on asking about the reaction videos.
Yes. Okay,
so we can wait.
Well, I mean, we can say it now. I mean, we brought it up. So
people ask about the reaction videos and if they are canon. The answer is yes and no. And what I mean by yes and no is because there are some videos that progress the canon along. Like you look at like the Eagles reaction from last year. You look at the Dolphins fan reaction from last year. You've seen the Cardinals reaction from a few years ago. You have there's a lot of it. However, and this is done very intentionally, I also didn't want to put myself in a box where if I had a really good idea, I'd be screwed and have to go with that character. So that's why it's like a Cardinals fan. It's Falcons fan. They don't necessarily have to like fit in the canon. Like they don't have to. Like they can just be one-offs. So that's how I would put that. There's some that do, but I also would argue like none of them are completely necessary. Would they help? Sure. There's a few. But they're not like 100% necessary. Like if I miss a reaction video, oh crap, I'm not gonna understand anything that's going on.
Right.
So, confession. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So during that same episode, while they're all sitting at the table, we hear their mom come in and freak out, and then just leave everybody and never heard from again. Who is she, and what happened to her?
So the headcanon that I have is she literally just dipped and is like sitting in Florida somewhere, like just literally just like chilling on a beach. Because like if you had to deal with Bruce Springsteen, like Frederick on a daily basis, you would go insane too. So like legitimately she just dips.
Okay. Perfect. So that all wraps up, and then the East Saga truly begins, and we're introduced to the NFC East characters as well. We're introduced to Gus. And when we were introduced to him, we hear like this weird voice that he has, like this weird like split personality thing that he has. What's up with that?
The Smeagol Gollum, like precious, like that. Yeah. I mean that just shows like how crazy Cowboys fans are. But if we want to get like really into it, you could see that would be elements of Chamis. Like that, that is, let me put it this way. Rocky's not the first one he tries to turn. And like Gus is vulnerable because like Gus is this kind of person who like, I'm supposed to be amazing. America's team would have you. And it never goes that way ever. So he's just a bit broken. And if it wasn't Rocky, it probably would have been him.
Okay.
So
that makes so much sense. Okay.
Yeah. It's Jim B.
Hey.
Well, let him make his off-Broadway debut. He's just got to get the funding. The funding it's tight. It's tight. Yeah. Some people don't like 6-hour monologues. I don't know why, but
exactly. So going off the Cowboys fan tangent. So we also see Scooter during this, and some people are wondering how he fits into all of this.
That's not Scooter.
Okay. Yeah.
So, again. Chamis.
Okay.
Like, it's kind of alluded to in the West Saga too. Perna is not Perna. Like I love Perna to death. But he's not Perna, right? Mac's dad, who like makes the call, is not Mac's dad. Like that's not actually his dad making the call. So that would be Chamis, who is manipulating those things, because we talked about his powers and like able to hallucinate, what have you. There's a scene that also alludes to that, because in the season 2, when Tom is in the bathroom and looking in the mirror, he sees Chamis, and then when Gus is looking in the mirror, he sees Scooter. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of was like that, a little bit of a allusion.
I was meaning to ask about that, but I completely forgot to write it down. So yeah, so the saga goes along. We have a lot of funny moments and all this stuff. So then during the week 9 episode, there is a scene where Wildflower looks at a tree and he blatantly says, "Why do things die?"
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know if there was any thought to if that was foreshadowing anything.
Not as much as like what it would turn out to be.
Okay.
But Wildflower is another arc that I love. He's not done, but he carries around this guilt of like killing his parents. Like he legitimately thinks that he kills his parents. And like every time I talked about him, like I talked as if it was Wildflower, like he killed his parents. Like now in reality, like was it actually him who did it? Not really. Like it wasn't his fault. But that is him like kind of reflecting on, yes, like why do things die? And more of like reflecting on his parents and what have you. Yes. Yeah. That's when we get the Bruce Springsteen reality show. Hey, Coach, season 4. Don't worry, there'll be some spinoffs. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Yeah. There'll be some like one shots and stuff. Yeah.
So a little later on, we find out that Joe is the dad who he left and he came back. And he left and then Danny appeared. What happened?
Yeah, so when Joe left a while ago, like the first time, like when he left, when he left, he literally started another family. Like he went out and like met someone, and that's where Danny comes from. So like Danny, like technically that's why he's like the step bro of Springsteen, because he legitimately like bounced. So during that time that Joe is away, he goes and like, has Danny and what have you, and then like tells Danny like, all right, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna, go to see like these people and all this stuff, and then he just doesn't come back. So then that's when Danny, winds up being like, okay, well, I'm gonna go look for this guy. So that's where they're tied there. So that's why it's like technically like stepbrother.
And leading on to that, so Joe is brought to the house where Springsteen rests, and Carl has a plan, or sort of how Joe is going to wake Springsteen up. Like, what was Carl's plan here, if there was one?
I think it was kind of just trying everything to the point of like maybe like dad with some emotional catharsis like will like wake him up and like do that. By the way, it wouldn't have worked. Like it definitely wouldn't have worked. But I mean, it was kind of just like a way of saying like, hey, you're his dad. Maybe you should actually do something about this because like we shouldn't be the ones taking care of him. So it was more of just like attempting to try and, wake him up, or at least giving it to an adult and saying like, hey, do your job.
Exactly. So obviously Joe is shot dead in his own car. Boom.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. So after he fell unconscious, he kind of like there was like some sort of like ghost figure that kind of just like looked at him and just like freaked out for a second before he turned around and saw Springsteen. So like how did that work? Like I know like he should technically be on the beach at that point, so why is he there?
Yeah, so when he dies, like right off the bat, so a couple things. We'll talk about the beach in its entirety.
Yes.
The beach is like where you go before like you're going to pass on, right? Like that's where it's going to go. However, it sometimes takes some time for you to get to the beach. Like sometimes like you don't automatically go there. So like that's happening the split second he gets shot. And then like he's having an out of body experience and is like, oh crap, like I'm literally looking at my body. And then he turns around and sees Springsteen, who's going to guide him to the beach.
Gotcha. All right. Cool.
Hold on, we got. Oh, there we go. Sugar said Joe met someone. Do the characters have the ability to form a relationship with regular people who aren't Tom? Well, again, all this is happening inside Tom's mind. So yeah, lots of things are possible of what's happening. So that also probably should have been said. Like the East and West sagas are all happening in the crawl space. Like all of them are happening in the crawl space. And that is alluded to at the end of the East saga when Tome pops out and is like, where am I? Yeah. So yeah, all that's happening in there. So yeah, the characters can have whatever pretend relationship they think that they have. I say that as nicely as humanly possible. But like, I think it was a Thomas or Ambition talks about that. Saying like, it's funny that they're playing games and like, they all have names and stuff like that. I think that was Shamus. I think it was Shamus, who like basically mocks that. But yeah, I mean, they can. How real is it? I mean, like it's a philosophical question, right? So, yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, you could see that like that. I would honestly, like, to be completely honest, I was hoping that would happen if the Dolphins. Oh my God, that would have been perfect for storytelling. But alas, I can't control that. Do they have canon ages? Yes, there are some that are older and younger, but I kind of just keep it at that. Like, like they're around the same age, either the younger or they're older. So like Grandpa Cardinal's gonna be older, Joe is gonna be older, etc. Just for canon purposes.
Canon, right? So, there's Joe and Springsteen get on the beach and they have this whole conversation. And Joe tells Springsteen to remind him that like just to tell Bruce about everything. So just to reiterate, because it hasn't been answered in a while, why did Joe take Bruce in the first place?
Yeah. So the thing is, if you look at Gus, you look at Rocky, Wildflower, they'd be crazy. So the way that I always interpreted it, like this is like my headcanon that I had, was literally like if they were like out at a store, like out at a supermarket, like Joe was like, whoa, like they crazy. And then there's like innocent Bruce. I need to remove him from that situation. So the issue is like that sets up the entire saga of the East, because when he takes them, I mean, like you have parents who are going out and looking for him. On top of that, you have Rocky who gets super duper pissed off, Wildflower, all the stuff that happened with him, so yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of like Joe saw a situation where like Bruce was not being treated great, or at least that was his assumption. And so he changed that. Mm-hmm. I mean, don't go and kidnap people. Like that's that's the moral of all this right here.
Yeah. Pretty much goes without saying.
CPS. Exactly, Ava.
Yes.
Exactly. He's like, I am the CPS.
So all that happens and
yeah.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Is he gone? Gone.
Okay.
Gone. God.
Noted.
God. There you go. Good.
Oh.
Clean yourself out.
So all this happens and Joe leaves to protect his family. So how did he know that his family was in danger? Like, did he actively see Bruce's family trying to get after him?
Yeah, so that was the thing. So it was Rocky, like, everything like that, trying to find him. And so because they knew like about Joe, if they had ever found Joe, they would find the family. So Joe left because that's what he thought would be best, for the family as a whole, in an attempt to try and protect him. Joe's a very flawed character. He's not a good parent.
No.
He's like not in any way, because I mean, like, one, he steals a kid. Like that's one, first and foremost. He steals a kid, being Bruce. And two, the bigger thing is like he winds up messing up a lot of his kids. And then he ditches. And like you could look at it and be like, okay, well, he did it for like these reasons. And like you could try to rationalize it. And he tried to rationalize it. At the end of the day, he kind of has a bit of a redemption arc because he's able to, be there for his kids. And like he has these moments where he's definitely there for them. But like he's a flawed individual. And I think like that's what it comes down to, of like he makes some really bad decisions, and a lot of those decisions wind up forming who these characters are. I mean, like if you really want to look at it, he forms a lot of, who like Bruce and Springsteen are, like, because he creates that whole dynamic because he introduces Bruce to the family. Carl hates him, right? So like there's that dynamic on top of that. Then you go even further, like, he's one of the major reasons why Wildflower is the way Wildflower is. Like we talk about how Chamas is responsible for it, but Joe is almost as responsible. That he's responsible for why Rocky is the way that he is, so yeah, he sets a lot of things in motion.
Very much so. So on the beach, it's just a place before everybody moves on. So Springsteen has accepted that he's gone and he is about to move on. Mm-hmm. And then Joe comes in and yells out to something to take him instead.
Yep.
I need to know if it was the blood demon or not.
So here's the thing. When Joe, because I think that question has been asked before of like, did Joe know who he was talking to? And the answer is no, he did not. Okay. So he did not know who he was talking to or what he was talking to, etc. Is it the blood demon? It's a little spoilery.
Okay.
But what I will say is that when it comes to the beach, it would have been near impossible for Joe to come back from that. Because he legitimately like was dying, right?
Yeah.
So like Springsteen's in a coma, kind of like in this like halfway point. So like he's chilling for a while. That's why he's on the beach for so long. And like he's also like he comes to grips. And like that's the thing. You see that in Coach season 3, like that messed him up as well because like he's going through a bunch of stuff as well, like of like being alive, having survivor's guilt, etc. So he doesn't know who or what he's yelling to. And I will say that there is a choice when you're on the beach to let go, in which you can go. And then there's another entity that will move you along, even if you're not ready. Like if it's taken just a bit too long. So there is another entity at play there. Whether it's the blood demon or not, we'll see.
All right.
So I commented to Westwood with ideas on the link between all the GCU characters name and their teams. Stop me later, explain them. All right, some of them are super easy. Like I'll start with the West real quick. So like just a few of their characters, like Gavin means White Hawk in Gaelic. So like that was like with the Seahawks. Lenny is named after a very, very famous Chiefs player. On top of that, Jerry is obviously for Jerry Rice. Finn Oakley, from Oakland, like that's what that means. Mac is like Khalil Mack. Breck is literally from Breckenridge, which is in Colorado. And then Louis, St. Louis, easy, Diego, San Diego. So that kind of stuff. Gus is like Angus beef, like coming from Texas. Like that's how simple that is. Rocky is obviously for Philadelphia because, Rocky Balboa. Yeah, those are like the big ones. Yeah, Danny, Dan Marino.
Then of course there's Tome for like the Vikings heritage. There's Chalmers for Chicago. There's Lamy for the Lions and losses and whatever you want to call the Lions, I guess.
Yeah, so, some of them are not deep, and then some of them are like, oh, in Gaelic, this means White Hawk.
Exactly.
It's honestly sometimes it's completely like off. Carl, I've told it. The reason his name is Carl is the stupidest reason his name is Carl. It's because in Boston, which I've been to many times, they say Ka, very funny. And I'm like, you know what? I would love to say that very often. So I just put an L at the end of it and made it Kyle. That's literally the only reason. That's like,
it is perfect.
That's the GCU. It's the mix of like pure stupidity and nonsense about like picking their name or diving so deep that it's like, I didn't even want it. Like, why? I didn't even need to know that.
Exactly.
It's like,
God. So when Joe finally moves on, he goes around the house and he kind of sees his boys one final time. Like, how did that work? Like, was he just able to move throughout and just say goodbye in that kind of way?
So technically, he's not gone. The reason being he's not gone is because he pops up again to go with Carl. So like so he's not gone. So like he goes at that moment and is like pretty much there, but he's able to like chill in more of a limbo for the time being. Yeah. So he disappears in that moment and then he's able to say goodbye to like his kids and like, and able to like kind of like watch over them kind of stuff. But he's going to linger for a bit longer. And like I said, there's an entity that like likes to keep the natural flow of things. So,
gotcha.
There's that LQ for the Browns, obviously.
No,
exactly.
Of course, it had to be mentioned once.
Of course.
So at the end of the East Saga, we see Chalmers, the orange shirt guy, finally pop up. How did Chalmers find this family?
So when it comes to Chalmers, he can walk. He can travel freely between the void to basically a ton of different aspects of Tom's mind, because like that's what fear is. When it comes to like that family, a lot of Tom's, like this is getting like super deep, but like a lot of Tom's mind power, thought power is coming from there. And that intrigued him of like, hey, he saw this. He also saw how dysfunctional it was. And it would later give him an idea of like, well, if I get a bunch of people together again in the future, maybe they'll all kill each other. So for him, like, he's just kind of able and willing to go from place to place. But if it comes from like mind power, in which like, hey, what the hell is happening here? And because he is an emotion, he is able to, he like plays by different rules than like the rest of the characters.
Gotcha. So, but just before the Saga ends, we see the little murder mystery episode, which was far better than I remember it when I watched it a few days ago.
Coming out at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m.
Yeah,
no
of course.
Power, no internet. Did that whole thing. It was great.
Yikes. So in that episode, Danny is seen approaching Rocky to finally do him in for what he did to his dad. And then he didn't remember anything after that. So I was just curious what happened there. Did Chamas or / Rocky somehow knock him out, or just what happened?
Yeah, so he gets knocked out. So that's what it is. So like he legitimately gets knocked out. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're referring to, I think it's Gus who does it. I think it's Gus who winds up hitting him in the back of the head. Like, what you're talking about, right? Like Danny's about to go do it and then he gets knocked out.
Yeah.
Try to remember. Was that Gus? I think it was Gus. Might have been Chamas though. I forget. That's been a while since I've been at. But yeah, the point was that he got knocked out and was unable to do the thing that he wanted to do.
Gotcha.
I forget who I had it down as. No, because Gus was downstairs with Wildflower, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, then that would be Chamas. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Can the 3 in Neverland, can they come back? Not like you think. I'll put it that. Theater Geek hasn't punished anyone on clickbait while performing on a very model of a modern major general. Yes.
Listen, my gosh.
I'll have my moment in the sun. And we'll
I want to see that now.
We'll dress up as Lenny. We'll just have ourselves a time.
Perfect. So, and then I was going to ask, so when Carl dies, it's very sad, we see Joe on the beach as well. So, well, obviously we kind of already answered that. But, like, he gave himself up for Springsteen, but then he came back, and then Carl is there. So, I guess we kind of already answered that.
Yeah, so, again, like, you can choose willingly to go. And there is an entity that keeps things moving along. There are like exceptions with that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, what it comes down to is like for the entity is we want to keep things in order. If this gets things in order further, because if Joe is there, Carl would probably just move along and have a nice day. Mm-hmm. Then you know what? Sure, we'll break some rules.
Okay. Cool.
So that's what it is. No, Springsteen's dumb. Don't get me wrong. Like Springsteen is dumb, but no, he is not as dumb as others. And he does play it off a bit. No, that's not canon. Clickbait sports is not canon. No, that is not. Definitely not. So we started having that there'd be some really big problems.
Just a few.
Yeah.
So at the very end of the season, it kind of revealed that Chamas wants everybody dead. Yes. For lack of a better term. We kind of already explained this, but why does he want them specifically dead? Like, if he knows that Tom's mind is like limitless in a way, why did he just fixate on this?
So because that's what was being fixated on at the time, right? Okay. So if you were looking at, because like Coach and the East and the West, like they go, like there's overlap that goes on there. Yeah. So if you think about it from a pure canon perspective, that they occur on the same timeline. So this is occupying a ton of Tom's mind and space, and that's distracting him from what Chamas wants to do. Like that's distracting Tom from, being safe, what have you, right? It's being creative, it's these characters, etc. So that way, if Chamas is able to eliminate that, like again, it's messed up, but like if he's able to eliminate every obstacle that's in there and being everything that's in there, all is left is fear. That's all that Tom is going to fixate. That's all that Tom's going to focus on, and then boom, he's in control.
Gotcha.
So that's when it becomes like, okay, we tried with the East, was a little bit successful, moderately successful. Now we try with the West, where he literally is like, I saw what happened here, and now I'm going to try to make it better for the sequel.
Gotcha.
I'll come back with a new reign of the Patriots. Everyone wants it. No, he's not going to come back like that. I know you want it. I gave you some glimpses. Okay. All right. He came back in like a reaction video.
So he's not coming back.
It's fine.
So then we move on to Coach Season 3 and the mind trickery that is that entire season. So in the premiere, we see Junior and Lamy interacting outside the crawl space, and we see Junior feeding Lamy. So for those who what does he do?
Yeah, so the way that I looked at that is depression feeds off of joy. Yeah. So when it comes to the feeding, it like literally was draining Junior. Like it was draining him. And that's why progressively as the season goes on, Junior becomes less and less joyful like himself, and instead becomes like bedridden and is literally like he takes the place of Lamy by the end of the season because he's the one that's like in the bed, confined, etc. And so then the question becomes like, well, is Lamy like doing it on purpose? Well, I put it this way. It's like a parasite, right? In which it's like, no, he's not necessarily like an evil character or anything like that. But at the same time, like depression is rough. And what I mean by that is like, it's exhausting. It takes your joy. It takes your energy. It takes all of that stuff. So you have Junior who's trying to keep everything together. Like he's like, okay, I gotta wait for Tom to come back. I gotta wait for Tome to come back. I gotta do a freaking show. I gotta do all this stuff. Oh, and I gotta take care of this random person with a lion who's appeared, and who's the complete opposite of me.
Yeah.
And I will say too, Junior makes some bad decisions as well because he tries to confine him, in which he confines him and it's like, hey, if you stay here, you won't do any damage. So yeah, sure, like take some of my energy, take that, and like the way that. And this is like my stupid little like Easter egg that I do. The reason like Lamy's hair isn't done, for example, is because like there's days like when it comes to like depression that like you can't even get out of bed and like do your hair. Like it's like, you know, like that's too much of a chore. Like that's too much of a task. And so because of that, like that's why he looks the way that he does. And there's some childish aspects to it because but there is to Junior too, because they're complete opposites in terms of like, yeah, they represent similar things. They're just on opposite sides of the spectrum.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. Rebecca's got a question here. Focus on One Family is Mine at a Time. Is that where the timeline overlaps? By the way, Vampire Lamy. Yes. So it's not necessarily. So put it this way: the East appears, right, and everything happens like it does with the East. And so now there's overlapping stuff that's starting to happen, like stuff with the West is going on at the same time as the East is going on. And again, if you're Chamas, that's the worst thing possible. Like that's not good. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it causes things to overlap 100%. And now, like, things are just going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. Yes, Tome is love. Yes. So Tome is love. Yes.
So, then we move on to the next episode of the Coach Season 3. We see Chamas, and he's pretending to be Carl. And whenever this Carl character and Springsteen are in the same room, Springsteen always seems to remember something, even if it's not his own memory. So is Chamas, like, deliberately just, like, making him remember things he doesn't actually should remember just to break him?
Yep. Yeah. It's 100%. Yep, 100% hallucinations. And he's looking at that. If I can break him, because Springsteen is vulnerable as hell right now. If I can break him and just feed on stuff that's happened in his past, even whether it's realistic or not, when it starts coming of like, well, why did you survive? Like, why, out of all the people, like, why did Carl die and you didn't die? Like, why did Joe die and you didn't die? Like, all of these things, if I'm able to break him and turn him against everybody, like, I win. Like, I'm going to crush it.
Exactly. Okay. So before the season happens, Tom and Tome get split up somehow in the crawl space. They go in and they get split up, obviously because like they come out in random spots or whatnot. But were they together for a time before they split up, or is that too? Okay.
Nope. Gotcha. Nope. They're completely separated from the very beginning. So like when you see Tome come out of like Bruce and Springsteen's house, that's the minute that like he comes out of like Tom and Springsteen's house. Yeah. So he comes out and then Tom is elsewhere and gets found by Ambition.
Yeah. Okay. Elsewhere. So but okay, so Tome just enters the crawl space and while the Saga is going or just wrapping up. How does Tome know about Carl owning the sunglasses that Frederick now has?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So what happens is because Tome, he freely goes back and forth, right? Because when things are good, cool. He's going to go chill in the crawl space. Like he's going to relax. He's going to do his thing. He's going to meet Linda. Like, you know, he's going to do all that stuff. So like he's interacted with them before. Like he's interacted with some of the characters before because like he's been around. I wouldn't say it's it's like his priority or anything. Like he's not like super invested, but like he knows about other entities that are in there, whether they're minor or whether they're major.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So there is a time where Tome leaves the Frederick and Bruce and Springsteen's house and freaks out about Linda because he realizes that she could be in trouble. Did he?
Oh, like, you froze. What'd you say? Did he what?
Did he like go check on her during that time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, well, there's a point where when he leaves, so he goes to try and find her and she's not there. Like, you know, like in the normal places, like not there. So he has Tome is like going through stuff in season 3 because he kind of knows, and because he knows that there's something wrong. There's something off. Something doesn't feel right. There's issues with Linda. That becomes his main focus, and he doesn't really want to believe it. And he doesn't until like he actually, you know, comes face to face with her. So yeah, he tries to go and find her and, you know, say like what the hell's going on, but he can't. Like he's unable to find her. And so basically he looks at it and is like, okay, this is Chamas's fault. Like he must have done something. He's the guy who screwed all this up because Chamas is a complete, you know, a-hole, and that, and he literally takes his rage out like on Chamas. So
gotcha.
What happened to Joy?
What happened to it? So yeah. So during so that all happens. Then Coach Season 3, Episode 3, one of my personal favorites, is the one that's centered around Chamas and all that stuff. Yes. So when he's in the void, he is somehow looking at this TV and he's getting a glimpse into what is the real world.
Yes.
How is that possible in a sense?
Yeah, so for certain emotions and characters, so like the big overarching ones, so like fear, joy, love, etc., they can know what's going on in the real world. And so like I always looked at that TV as like looking through Tom's eyes, like his actual eyes of like what's going on in the world. So that was his way, because that's their way of like being able to check in on things. Because at the same time, like even though they are in the crawl space, they can still have an impact on what's going on. It's just not very, I want to say it's less strong. So because of that, they want to keep an eye on things. And of course, for Ambition and Chamas, that's really, really important because they need to know what's going on for them to make their next move.
Of course.
So yeah, that's it. Sure. I got you, Ari. Sorry.
So during this time, he also, Chamas is talking to Lamy about like certain things and like what he's seeing and just like kind of explaining it to him. And at some point, he's a bit desperate when he says that Lamy needs to stay in the void. Like, why is Chamas desperate to keep Lamy where he is? Because
there's a difference. Put it this way: there's a difference between fear and depression. Depression will kill Tom. Like it will go straight up kill him. Fear will keep him alive in his mind, right? It will keep him alive. It'll keep him safe. Depression's not going to keep him safe. Depression's going to do the complete opposite of him and can actually hurt him. So, that's why letting Lamy out is very, very dangerous, because if you let him out, I mean, like you saw what happened to Junior, you see what happens to Joy. So, he's not willing to let that, because again, he's 100% messed up. You could argue he's 100% wrong in the way that he's doing things. But at the end of the day, Fear, Chamas wants to keep Tom safe, and Lamy would not do that.
Right.
It'd be the opposite. Yeah. So, possible for the East-West cast to escape Tom's mind in the real world? Yes. Yeah. It is possible. It is 100% possible. Is there an angrier, or is that not happened yet? Oh, is there like a rage anger character? There is. Yes. Ooh. There is a rage anger character. Yes. Cool. Yes, there is. 100%.
I have a guess, but I'll leave that there. So, during Chamas's episode, he goes around a little bit, and we see him doing certain things. And one of the things that he does is he goes to the place that Tome and Linda stay. And, well, we don't know this yet, but he goes there, and he's just wrecked when he comes out. So, obviously he saw Linda, and she's gone. Or, well, saw that Linda is gone, or she's dead. Like, why was he so distraught at that point? Like, wouldn't he be excited about this?
That's a great question. So, the thing is that there are some characters who, as we've talked about now, there's tiers, right? Linda was one of those characters where, like, love is very, very attached in terms of Tome. And he doesn't give a crap about Tome. He don't really care about that.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of like, Linda's been referred to as insulation the entire time. Linda being gone really messes up Tom's mind because no longer is he protected. There's no longer any insulation. And because Linda is gone, things that shouldn't be happening are going to happen. And he knows that. And so because again, remember his original plan, chuck Tom right back into the crawl space, right? Chuck him in, have a nice day. Great. He's going to be safe in there because Linda's there to insulate. It's going to be fine, right? Like he's going to be pissed. He's going to be upset, but he's going to be safe. Mm-hmm. Now, like all hands are off. Rules can be broken. Things can shatter.
Okay.
And you've actually seen this without knowing you've seen it.
Oh yeah, the ending of the West Saga.
Yes, but before that.
I'll figure that out later.
First episode of the West Saga, you see it.
I'll figure that one out later.
Okay. Incapable of helping Tom. No, because I would say at the same time, the way that Lamy has been dealt with has been wrong every single time that it's been dealt with because it's either repressed or isolated on the outside, and that's it. Both of those are the way wrong answer to try and deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
sweet.
Yeah.
So then we're moving on to the live stream episode of Coach Season 3, which is heartbreaking still. So during that episode, like we see that Harold has disappeared and Junior kind of just brushes it off. Does he know like the significance of Harold and what Harold represents?
No, not really. I mean, like he knows of Harold, but not to the degree of like really what he symbolizes. Like it's kind of just like he's there, right? Mm-hmm. Just like Joy is always there, and then Joy really is not there anymore, and Harold's not there anymore. So it's like, ugh. Like season 3 really is focusing on the absences of like that are not there, and because of that, like his outside life really crumbling because of it. Mm-hmm. So accurate. Who doesn't need a Dan Campbell in their life?
I would love one.
Doesn't.
So during this live stream, we see the Vapors account appear, and the mods aren't timing him out, and I still don't know why. And so who's behind the Vapors account? And like
nobody.
I know nobody. Yeah.
Because that doesn't actually happen.
Exactly. So like is that just Lamy getting to him in some way?
Yep. So that's 100%. So that is him being so run down. He's not even doing a live stream. Like it's so like the live stream like from way like that was like the 5 or 6 hour one that like that alludes to this episode. Yeah. So he's doing this entire thing. None of this is actually happening though. Like he's literally going through a spell of like he thinks that he's doing this job. He's doing this live stream. He's not talking to anybody. Like he's seeing things literally on it. Yeah, 100%. So that's a number of things. Chamas also is still impacting him. He's got some unresolved issues with Chamas because like Chamas literally disposes of him in season 2, 1, and 2. You see him in the first episode of season 3. Like he starts to hallucinate and dream about him. So that's kind of what he's going through at that point. Yeah.
So like during this time, like Junior's starting to open up about like what he's feeling and that sort of thing. And he constantly says that like we aren't allowed to have these feelings. And he mentions we several times. Do all the characters that represent something always have that like that pit of emotion that they're not supposed to be projecting or feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a matter of, there is that collective of like, hey, like this isn't our job, this isn't our role, like this is what we're supposed to do, and when we don't do those things, like that's the problem. You know, like that's messed up. So Lamy's doing technically what Lamy's supposed to do given the circumstances. I mean, again, you shouldn't lock joy and depression in a room together because depression can win out. And that's a problem. So yeah, that's kind of like the bigger issue. But yeah, like they understand their job to do, and when they're unable to, like Lamy is, like that messes with him. And again, it's his job isn't I'm gonna kill Tom. It's like this is who I am. Like I need to be handled well. Yeah.
So is Junior aware of what Lamy is doing to him?
So that's the thing. I'll put it this way. Junior is willing to sacrifice in a way himself to keep things status quo. So
Okay.
it's like if you have, older or younger siblings, right? And let's just say like you're play fighting or whatever, and you wind up hurting your sibling, and you don't want your parents to know. You're like, oh crap, crap, crap! Like here, like I'll give you money, I'll give you a toy, you can play video games with me. Like you're willing to make all these concessions to make sure that it doesn't. Because think about it, Junior is waiting for them to come back. What happens when they come back and everything is like to crap? And like, Lami's like running around and there's depression. He's not supposed to be here. So it's basically his way of trying to maintain control. And for him to do that, okay, fine. Like, sure, take some of this. That's fine. That's
okay.
Because he thinks that it's sustainable when it's not.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating to know. Okay. Yeah. So that kind of wraps up that episode. And then we get to the one that preludes the finale, where we see Wildflower and Tome finally meet each other, and some things are said. So Tome went to Wildflower because he knows how to get into the void, which is a bit fascinating to me. So how did Wildflower know that Chamas could get into the void?
So he has seen Chamas come and go because he's had interactions with Chamas. He had interactions with Chamas, obviously, when he was younger. He also had interactions with Chamas at the end of the East finale. Because you see that from their perspective. So he can see him like, Chamas is walking, and then he's gone. So like he has an idea. Now, the headcanon that I have for Wildflower is Wildflower has been under so many substances that he has found himself at times in places of Tom's mind that he should not be before. So because of that, he has a better understanding of what's going on.
Okay.
Because he's taken some trips that he shouldn't have taken.
I love that so much.
Yes.
That's need not explain more.
It's a way of medicating for him because of all the things that he's gone through, honestly. But he's gone to places he shouldn't have.
Okay.
Oh, he did, Beardy. That's it.
So, of course, the burning question that a lot of people had when seeing that episode is, we saw Rocky and he is alive after he died. Can you explain why Rocky is alive?
Yes, I get this question more than anything. So, like, if and it's the best part about it was people saw it in the West finale and they're like, who the hell's that? Like, wait a minute, how's Rocky there? That makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, okay. So East finale, you see Rocky die, right? Die. He gets buried, right? As is revealed in the Coach Season 3 finale, Ambition actually steps in and digs him up soon thereafter, and basically recruits Rocky to do his bidding because he knows how much Rocky hates Chamas because Chamas basically screwed him over and then abandoned him. Yeah. So the way that it happens is like he wasn't ever actually dead, very close. Ambition kind of like nurses him back, brings him back and says, all right, time for you to go to work. And that's how Rocky is alive.
Okay. So hopefully that answers the question. Like,
that's it, Ava. God, that's a question for us all. A little bit of, let me put it this way. Out of all the characters that we've seen from like the East and West, besides Frederick, who goes through his own little thing, I would say Wildflower is the most awake.
Yeah.
I would say 100% he's the most awake.
I would hope so.
Yeah. Only mostly dead. Exactly, Matt. Exactly.
Yeah. So, and then so that whole episode happens, a plan is hatched. And then we get to the Coach Season 3 finale, which is a trip. In the first few minutes of that episode, we see Ambition and Tom and a super secret part of the void that we don't know anything about, and we probably shouldn't know anything about quite yet. And we see Ambition, and all of a sudden he pulls out Harold. How is Harold there?
Yeah. So when I was doing that, so that original plan for Harold, and I've talked about this on stream before, the original plan for Harold was that he was going to get broken in season 3, and then he was going to like. Ambition was going to have him at the end, kind of reformed. So the idea behind it was that after Harold got broken, the door was opened and Ambition was able to yoink him into that. Because Ambition, let me put it this way. The door has been opened before and we have not seen it been opened.
Yeah.
So, for example, the very first episode of Coach, Tome is in there. And then the next episode, Tome is out here. Yeah. So the door can be opened, and sometimes that's by accident, sometimes that's on purpose, what have you. So the way that I kind of wrote it in my head was that when it came to Harold, the door got opened and Harold was then taken.
Okay.
So, and then he put it together knowing that would eventually manipulate Tom.
So did Harold break in the lore, or?
Yeah, so it just didn't happen at the right time. So like, that's why I say like that actual live stream was a prelude to like what you would see in Coach season 3.
Yeah.
Because that, like, again, like that's when you saw Ambition and stuff like that. So like that's like, it's a weird, that stream, the weird stream, is always like on that weird, like it's canon and not canon at the same time. But the way that I like to phrase it is like Harold's gone, and then he gets put back together again by Ambition.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a weird stream.
1 a.m. in the morning and freaking out about it. So during this time, so we see Ambition, and he's doing, his plan is finally coming to fruition, and he snaps Tome away. And Tome wakes up on the beach, and he's dressed in a different jersey. He's never worn this jersey before. Can you explain why, like, some characters just show up and like or have jerseys on the beach, and why they're dressed somewhat nicer?
Yeah, so I mentioned this in the stream before, because the idea of like you're wearing your Sunday's best, like when you're gonna go die, and obviously there's a lot of allusions to that because like football's on Sundays, what have you. But you look at like the jerseys that they're wearing, and not all of them do, because some of them don't need them. Like Carl, for example, like Carl's not gonna put on a jersey. Like Carl's already is in his Sunday's best. Same thing with Joe. Like he doesn't really represent, like obviously like he's Dolphins, whatever, but like he's not really like that's not a huge part of his character. But again, when they like pop up on the beach, yeah, it's an idea of like they are ready to die, because that's what happens. Like you go to the beach and then you die. So yeah. Because again, it's all happening in Tom's mind. So like it makes sense for him. Like, oh, okay, well he's going there, so he's gonna look there. Yeah. When we go international, Coach season 27 will be international.
I thought it was 28.
Yeah.
So during this time, Tome talks to Linda, and we finally see her, and they have this whole conversation. And Tome wants to leave and just go back and try to fix everything that was broken.
100%.
I don't know if you can answer this, but how does one leave the beach
without question.
Dying?
So that's a great question. So again, depending on the circumstances in which you got to the beach, things might change. So like, for example, if you were shot or stabbed or anything like that, it's going to be significantly harder for you to do that because one, who knows what happened to your body, first of all. And then two, on top of that, you need to figure how to get out of it. So is it possible? Yes. Is it incredibly difficult? Also, yes. So this is going to be figured out and like be explained in Coach season 4, because you have prominent characters that are on the beach. You have Chalmers, you have Tome, and now you have Captain Finn Oakley who are there. So there's also another character that is shown there as well, which is the Blood Demon, which the Blood Demon here like grants wishes. So we'll kind of see what they decide to wish for.
All right. So all that happens. And then Chalmers and Ambition, they finally meet in the void, and Chalmers is dying in a way. And Ambition's just like, haha, I'm the greatest ever now. But Chalmers told Ambition that he can't kill him.
Yes.
And that makes sense because like they're two prominent rival emotions, and they've been going at it for years. But I was just curious, what would happen if one tried to kill the other? Like,
it just wouldn't work. So like, if he like pulled out a knife and was like bam, 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 like it just literally wouldn't do anything. So that's why they both plot against each other to use conduits to do it, right? So because technically the only one that could kill like a severe emotion like on that tier would be Tom himself. So like it's funny because Chalmers wound up screwing himself over so badly because forcing Tom to come into the crawl space actually wound up like causing his undoing. And it just worked out really, really well for my Ambition. Now you could also look at like, okay, you have Tome and you have Junior who are coming out of the crawl space. why didn't like Ambition come out of the crawl space at the same time? Like, why didn't you see like, no, Lamy does come out of the crawl space, but why doesn't he come out? And the reason being is because, okay, he comes out, then what? He's like another emotion that's there. It's super like awkward and confusing. Why are you here? Go back in. Yeah. So it's a matter of now he's like, he's playing the long game. He sees what occurs because he can see it through the TV. He can see it in the void. He sees what occurs and goes, okay, like this is once Tom is coming in, he like knows, all right, well, now I know what I need to do. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So after all that happens, we cut back to Tome and Linda, and Linda goes away. She's gone now. And everybody seems to have this really jarring reaction to it. So is that just because she was the installation, or was there something more there?
Nope, it's because she's the installation. And even if they are not aware of what's wrong, they know something's wrong.
Okay.
Because, again, things are now, in Tom's mind, things are fractured. It allows, like, he's not protected, he's not insulated, he's not safe. And so now things in his mind can get even worse than they have already been. And you're going, again, you've seen that a little bit already via characters, but you'll see it, like, the consequences of that even further down. Okay. Tom's schizophrenic. Well, they end up just I mean, they're already there. I mean, they're already the characters in Tom's mind. So yes, yeah, they're already hanging out there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So just after that, we cut back to the scene in the void, and Tom kneels down in front of Chalmers in the exact same manner that Chalmers did Tome in the beginning of Coach Season, the premiere for Coach Season 2.
Correct.
And Tom just straight up kills him right then.
Sure, straight up. Yep.
Did he regret doing so?
I think okay, so what's going on with Tom is, one, he's kind of convinced by Ambition to do it, because like Ambition is selling a great product. He really is. I mean, like on the surface, you look at that and you're like, what's wrong with this guy? Like he's saying good things. The thing is, like, where you can see that maybe Ambition is not so great is because like he talks about monsters, and in those monsters, like Tome is pictured as well.
Yes.
So he has a similar mindset to Chalmers of like, I want to be in control. I want to be the guy. So it's not until after he kills the fear that he realizes, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Like, it's like you're pent up here in the moment. You're like, yes, we're going to do it. I've been sold this bag of goods. And then he does it. And now, oh crap. Like, what did I just do?
Yeah. Perfect. So after that, Ambition finally just assumes control, and something happens to Tom. What happened to Tom, and why was he just so shaken up?
Great question. All right, so this is like a whole nugget of information. I figured this question was going to be asked. At the end of the day, because you could ask, like, why didn't Tom just go back? Like, why didn't like Tom just go back and like, how did I stay? At the end of the day, it was Tom's decision to stay.
Oh.
Because he relinquished that to Ambition.
Wow.
So he made that decision. So that would have been dropped in the first episode of season 4. But yeah, he made the decision after that because he's he's basically broken. I mean, like, at this point, there's no Linda, right? He thinks Thomas betrayed him, and then he's dipped. On top of that, Chalmers is gone now too. And so he's like, oh. And let's be honest, what has gone well for Tom outside?
Nothing.
So, he's going to chill in the void.
Oh, wow. Okay. That was a lot more different than I thought was going to happen. Yep. So, then Ambition finds his way out. And Lamy just opens up the crawl space for him. Does Lamy realize that that's Ambition?
No. Oh. Not until later. Well, until I should say, not until it's too late, and he gets he gets some neck pain. So yeah, no, he does not realize it at first.
Yeah,
because he thinks it's Tom.
Yeah.
Yep. Which they've never had a conversation. So it'd be great.
Oh, that would be great.
Don't worry, that conversation's coming.
Oh, well, I mean, I assume so. And like you can also see the shirt sticking out as Ambition is making his way out. So that's, oh man. So obviously then that pretty much just wraps up Coach Season 3. Obviously we see Chalmers is now on the beach, and he and Tome are just chilling there now. But now we enter the West Saga. and everything that has to do with that. So one of the questions that the community asked was, why did Finn Oakley, like, how did he find the house? Like, how did the captain find the house, even though we know he did receive an invite?
Hold on. Pause that real quick. So just to set that up, so at the end of season 3, Chamas alludes to he's the one who sets up the entire West. And just because I just want to like lay that out there.
Oh, yeah.
He sends out those invites. He's the one who sends out everything because his idea is if I get all these things into a room, they might kill each other because look what happened with the East, right? If I can make that happen, great. I can make this happen again. So the question is, how did Finn Oakley find the house because he didn't get an invitation? Well, this is what I meant by when Linda dies, things happen that are not supposed to happen. So at that point, when she goes bye-bye, right? Because she's gone for a while at this point. So like when she goes bye-bye, you are going to see multiple characters that shouldn't be around at the same time. Because like when you do have those canon reaction videos, you're like, okay, cool, like whatever, that makes sense. But what happens when you have like the non-canon ones in which they're like random pirates or there's random like farmers over by a shed that are Falcons fans, etc. Guys that are not like, that are just like one-offs and what have you. The idea behind it the entire time was that because Linda's dead, you are going to have people show up that shouldn't be there. And Finn Oakley shouldn't really exist around the same time in the same space that Mac exists in.
Yeah.
But he does now because now things are starting to shatter a bit.
Gotcha. I see Scooter rated us, so hi, Scooter.
Scoots. Scoots. Well,
no,
Scoots,
none
you
of
walked in at a very interesting time.
You'll not know what's going on.
Lore, my friend. We're talking about the lore.
Mm-hmm. So during this time, a lot of stuff happens during the West Saga where it's just like people like just like responding to the games and just reacting to the whatever their team is doing. And at one point, Mac gets a call from what he thinks is his dad, and this was already alluded to. But so it was revealed that Chamas is the person who called Mac instead, or at least set up the phone call. But then at the end of the season, we see Oakley like walking up to Mac's dad and just like just ripping him to shreds.
Yeah.
Like, is Mac's dad a real person? Like, or
yes. Yes. So what you've seen in the flashbacks, like when he gets the invite, for example, like when he gets the invite, he has that conversation with his dad in the kitchen. Yes, he is a real person, 1,000,000%. The phone calls never happened though.
Yeah.
So like that's the only thing that didn't happen. But like it was pretty easy to manipulate Mac that it did happen because his dad's kind of a douche. So it was very easy for him to like buy into that would be like what his dad would do. Francis, come back.
Francis.
I mean, who says Francis went anywhere?
Oh.
Yes, Derek. Yes. Except he is in the wrong place. He is in the wrong place.
So then, like,
yes,
all that
there's
happens.
still a Q&A tonight. Don't worry. Yes.
So that all happens, and then we never see Mac's dad's face. Why?
I did that very intentionally because I didn't think he was worthy of it. I think like to go like deep into why I really did it was because I think a lot of people have experiences with those kind of parents or what have you, and putting a face on it, I think in a sense even kind of like does it a disservice because I think people who have had that experience know what that face looks like. And that's like, that was like the artistic, I want to call it art.
Okay.
It's like the artistic choice behind it. I didn't think that he was worthy of it.
Cool.
So
that's perfect. So as we go along the season, obviously Grandpa Cardinal's big storyline is he wants to find his grandson. He needs to find his grandson.
That's find his grandson.
And then it ends up being Wildflower of all people. I'm just curious, how long ago did you make him his grandson?
Yeah, that was a while ago. So that was the East. So like that was figured out during the East video. But here's the thing too. So like I would have only done that if it made sense. So I figured during the East that it was going to happen. And the way that I was able to do that was because the biggest thing, honestly, the thermal was the same.
Yeah.
So like that's what he originally looked like. It's the same thermal from years ago. And so I was like, okay, I can pull this off. Like I can actually make this happen. So because I had knew that in the East, I then started plotting things out for what eventually would be the West. I mean, like that whole story. I mean, yes, there's obviously other characters or whatever. Like that season, the West season, really is for like Grandpa Cardinal and Wildflower. Like that really is like the center of that story. You can make arguments what the center of the story is for the East, but like that is the center of it for the West, 100%. And Mitchell dropping a Fetty Fetty Kate. Woo! Mitchell, you drive safely. Drive safely.
Of course.
Drive safely.
So then we find out, we saw originally that Wildflower did visit Eugene first season, and we see that during his reaction video. Was that time before or after the whole incident with the parents happened?
Yeah. So you're like wondering like the timeline of it. So basically, if we're going back, because this is where like it gets a little complicated, because like in reality it was like a couple years ago, but like in the mind it, like I've always said time works differently in there.
Yes.
And so for that, the way that I had it planned out was that the parent stuff happened before he visited.
Okay.
But because as you see in the East, Wildflower the first season is not Wildflower.
No.
Like in the first episode, I should say. I'm sorry. The first episode of the East, he's not. He's like, he's all over the place. He's broken, definitely. He's freaking weird. Like he's out of his mind, but he evolves into what Wildflower would become. Yes. So I would say that he doesn't become Wildflower until after Grandpa Cardinal. Like that's why Grandpa Cardinal doesn't know who Wildflower is, doesn't know his name, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
So yeah. That's what I'd say. Matt and Eugene together as Guardian. Love that. Love that. Love that. There you go.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah, there's my face.
Yeah, he's in the process, like you said, Dean. Yeah, he's in the process of becoming who Wildflower would eventually become.
Gotcha. So I think you mentioned this already, but is Wildflower always in a different place? Like, is he high just because he wants to forget what he did?
Yes. I mean, that's an easy question. Yes. That's why he is always intoxicated with something, because it's a lot like, again, I would say out of all the tragic characters, like Wildflower by far is like the most tragic character, because the entire evolution of Wildflower is pretty horrific. Like he literally like loses his brother. On top of that, like his parents don't love him that much. Like that is it. Like they don't love him that much. On top of that, you know, he thinks he kills his parents, and so he's rattled with that grief. He goes through all the things that he goes through. He winds up killing his brother. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on with Wildflower. But yeah, so he masks a lot of that because he wants to forget.
Yeah. And then I was just curious about something. So the week 14 episode of the East Saga, that was the one all about Wildflower getting his crown. And then week 14 of this year, the West Saga, was all like the whole Grandpa Cardinal meets Wildflower and that whole conversation happens. Yes. Is that a coincidence? That was on the same week?
No.
Oh.
So the only the coincidence, I obviously couldn't plan the East 14 because like I know what the standings were going to be, right? Yeah. I couldn't do that, but I could plan it for this because whether he was going to lose it organically or whether he was going to give it up, you know, Grandpa Cardinal was going to give it up.
Oh, man.
There's a lot of parallels between the both seasons and like how things go, like when it comes to like how important the crown is. You can see like Lewis stops wearing the crown. Like he's like, I don't really care about this anymore. Like I just want like the power of it. So yeah.
That's why I was really looking forward to week 11, because I was like, oh, somebody's going to die this week, but no, thankfully. So moving on throughout the season, Eugene almost left when Wildflower convinced him to, because Wildflower got scared of what would happen. And Lenny convinced him to stay. But is there a specific reason why Eugene didn't let Wildflower stay and just kind of pushed him away?
I think because he knew that he was not going to be safe there. I mean, like he knows like Lewis is a lunatic. Like he knows that like things are going on in the house that are not great. And it's a matter of like protecting his grandson. Like he's really happy that he's there. Like he's really happy he gets able to like reconnect with him. He doesn't want him there though for whatever could potentially happen. I mean, put it up this way, it's like kind of one that like that paternal protection, but Grandpa Cardinal, like Eugene, like thinks like there's a good chance like he could die. There's a chance like, and he's putting it at risk that he could die there. He's already sick, you know, and then there's people who are actively like trying to kill him, which is like gonna be like Lewis. So at that point, I mean, you look at the decision that's made is because like he had that conversation with Lenny, and while he's very, very happy as Wildflower back in his life or whatever, like he was able to like be like, okay, like if that's the last thing that I do, like, okay, then like I'm good with it. Cause like now let me help somebody else. Cause as we look at Carl, in the East Saga, like the kind of arc that he has, Grandpa Cardinal goes himself through an arc as well. It's not about just finding his grandson. Like he is like this cranky ass, like old man who literally just like rips people apart, like week in and week out. He like traumatizes Jerry, like he goes after all of them. And they all respond in different ways. And like Lewis obviously goes down a different path and responds like very different because he's not accepted. It's a season where like Jerry, people like talk about his arc. Jerry, ever since that moment, like he is then looking for respect. I mean, like that's one of the main reasons like he teams up with Lenny, for example, because like, all right, I don't like him, but like I'm going to team up with him and like hopefully do so until I get better and I do better. And then eventually like he gains the respect from Eugene.
Gotcha. So, just going a bit further. So Oakley finds out what Breck did to Mac, and Breck thinks he's killed Mac, and he's having all these hallucinations of like, oh my god, I did this to this person. Like he, like just guilt just consumes him.
Yep.
And Oakley convinces him to go up to this house and walk the plank per se.
Yes.
But just before that all happened, Oakley said that this house is haunted, and obviously, like we know why. Is because that's the house where Linda died. Why? Like, how does he know that it's haunted?
So it's the idea of it. So it's cold. It's like that's where the center of the cold is coming from. So like that's where it's like literally radiating like off like freezing temperature because it's no longer isolated. And it honestly it's just like bad vibes. I mean, Finn Oakley's the kind of guy who believes in the black spot. He's the guy who believes in like some weird stuff. And so like him looking at it, he's like he knows that this is not a good place. Like this is not a place that you want to be in or like want to go, which is why he's going to send Breck there because, he's just like, yo, screw you.
All right, Travis. He's talking about NASCAR. One of the Hendrick guys. That's who's winning on Sunday.
The guy who goes in the fast car.
Yes, fast cars. Well, that works too.
By the way, they're like people ask who's that's like technically like it's actually like my dad's house. That's Papa Grossi's house. Like that's where he actually lives. But yeah. I film in his basement sometimes.
So I also got a very interesting question. So somebody didn't explain the whole Francis, Diego, Noah combination of names and characters. So could you just kind of like lay that out?
Yes. So in the Chargers fan reaction video, there is a Chargers fan who's wearing the Melvin Gordon jersey. His name is Francis, right? That's when you first see Lewis. Like they're kind of like these annoying stepbrothers who like don't get really along, whatever. As you go throughout the season, you realize that the person who is in the house as a Chargers fan is not Francis. So you see this through flashbacks. And at one point he's like, you got to make up a name. Like you got to come up with something. And the best part is like, his name is Diego. Right. But when it comes to like, he wants to be cool and wants to be hip because he just moved to like LA and is super cool. Like, he's like, I'm Noah. Cause like, that's a really cool, like, cool white dude name. So because of that, like he does that and Breck is like, no, like bro, like your name's Diego, and it fails like immediately. Yeah. So Francis, the guy who was supposed to be on the show, has his invitation stolen by Lewis. It is given to Lewis's friend, colleague, whatever you want to call him, which is Diego.
Gotcha.
So what happens to Francis? That's for another day.
All right. That's gonna be a follow-up, darn it. So during this time also we see Eugene's death, and you had me sobbing at 2 a.m. in the morning, and thanks for that. Yeah, you did it. But there's some confusion around the timeline of how that all like was laid out. So like, could you explain the timeline?
100%. Yeah, I probably should have done a better job with it, honestly. I'm very happy with that episode, but I was thinking about doing it, but people were confused because they were like, wait a minute, how is Eugene, like, how's Lenny going to see Eugene? Like, how is Eugene alive? And like the reaction videos, what have you. So like every time there's like a fade, so like he gets to the people, like he gets to the house, like that takes some time. He gets to the house, fades. Like he's hanging out with them, fades. Like goes into the back deck, fades. Like there's time that elapses like into the future. You're focusing on that one point, like that one story. That's why like Lenny is there at one point. That's where Lenny and Jerry there at the funeral, like when he eventually dies. It's just time, like some weeks go by that he actually gets to spend time with his family before he passes.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what that is.
And then we also see Lewis during this, like at the finale, and he's just sitting there and he's waiting for Chalmers. And well, we know now why Chalmers never showed up. It's because he is off on the beach right now. Yeah, he's gone. So somebody asked if Lewis burned down the house once he found out.
No, he did not burn down the house yet.
Yes. Okay.
I say that kind of jokingly, but there again, a lot of it depended. This is like people don't understand like the actual results of the games. Like they do have a big impact on like what the story is going to be. I have ideas of what I would like to do for certain characters, etc. Lewis, though, for a bit was kind of set in stone, and even that's why like I didn't do a follow-up episode, because even if he won the Super Bowl, the exact same outcome is going to happen. He's going to be looking for that validity. He's going to be waiting for Chalmers, and Chalmers is never going to come. So for Lewis, in that moment, he kind of realizes, wait a minute, what was this? Like he even says, like, there's a line is like, was any of this like real? You know, like what did this mean? So he's coming to grips with his entire focus this entire time was to gain respect, right? To gain that respect and to win. Like to get the power in the house, etc. And then he does all this, and he wins a friggin' Super Bowl. Like he does it. He's the last one standing, and no one is there for him. Like no one's there to shake his hand. No one's there to be like, you did all this because of X. And he's basically sitting there going, well, I did whatever I did to Francis, right? Diego doesn't talk to me anymore. I won this whole thing. Everybody hates me.
Yeah.
And what the hell was it all for? And so Lewis's story is very, very unfinished, and there's going to be follow-up to that, because he's also looking at like, okay, well, where the hell is Chalmers?
Yeah.
So, but again, like that also, so I said you don't need to watch Coach, but you start to understand like Lewis is a pawn, right? If you're looking at it with chess, like in which like, you know, ambition is playing chess, Lewis is a pawn. Right? Like for Chalmers, that's what he is. So he's kind of coming to grips with that. And some characters don't like that. Wildflower is kind of awake. He kind of knows what's going on, but he like doesn't care. Right? Lewis has no idea what's going on, and then comes to this realization of like, oh crap, like I got used. And then you look at Frederick, whose Frederick's story is, for me, like he's probably one of the most exciting characters I'm excited to dive into, because Frederick, he kind of wakes up a bit because he sees Carl, and then it's this other dude, and he's like, I don't know who you are, right? And things, then he literally looks around and is like, why is there Packer stuff? Yeah. You know, because that's the thing. When you're here, right? Because again, I only live in one house, but so for logistical reasons, but they don't like, if I'm Wildflower's, not Wildflower's a bad example. If I'm Bruce and I'm sitting here right now, I don't see Packer stuff everywhere, because that would blow my little mind, because that makes no sense to me, right? So he's not seeing that stuff. Frederick sees that stuff. Frederick kind of has that waking up moment and then goes, oh crap, well, what am I going to do with this information going forward? And you see what he does with that information at the end of the West. Gotcha.
Yeah, so that all goes down. And leading on to Frederick, like some people don't know, like what has he been up to ever since the ending of the East Saga in some sorts?
Yeah, I mean, you see kind of like he's chilling around the house, but like his story continues in Coach, like in Coach season 3, because he is kind of like, he's seeing Carl, like he's kind of going through some stuff. And Frederick's one of those characters, like he continuously just like gets his ass handed to him, right? Like he's gone through some stuff, like Bruce and Springsteen. Yeah, they like love him, but they like bash him all the time. On top of that, he has that weight of the responsibility that he has to be the one to like carry a division, be the leader. Carl is gone, all this stuff. And like, that's a lot of pressure for him to take. And so he's sitting there, he has that encounter with Chalmers, and then he's like, well, I'm leaving and I'm going to go do something else. And so, you know, it's alluded to a bit in the finale, but he says something along the lines of like, you know, what we do, what we always do, right? Like kind of show them the way, in which Frederick is now kind of going around, and he's doing one of two things. It's kind of both. He's gathering people, right? in which that are going to see him as this kind of like, hey, I'm not the guy who gets made fun of anymore. Like, I'm literally going to be the leader. That's one. And two, he's going to kind of be waking them up a bit and being like, hey, now here's the thing. Wake up to the point of like, oh, like, oh, there's traumas and ambition. He doesn't know like the extent of all that, but he's going to wake people up to the degree in which he is going to have a following, and what he wants to do with that, you know, that's
we're gonna find out.
we'll see about that.
We're gonna find out. So leading on more into the season, we see a couple characters who should be dead, but they're not dead. So how is Mac alive? Like, what happened?
So yeah, great question. So Mac, as you know, gets hit in the head. Gets in the head by Breck. Breck then takes his body and chucks him in the woods. Right? Frederick and his allies find him. So pretty early on, they find him. So that's why Mac is hanging out with them. Like, that's why he's like the new recruit. So like he's the new guy. So like they literally find him and they bring him, like they nurse him back, and now he's with them. And like that's why he chucks him the eye patch, etc. And then going on, because that's what they're doing, they find Breck. So much later, but they find Breck.
Yeah. So that answers like how Breck is alive. He fell and he lived, and then
yeah. And it's the same exact kind of like logic of like, hey, bring him back. And again, how long are they gonna be alive for? Who knows? But like that's what he is doing. Like he is trying to find these people. And again, originally I had this idea for like a hottest of seconds. And I think I mentioned this too, that Frederick was going to be like the cameraman, like behind like the reality show. But it made sense for me. And it would be a similar story because it was just like Frederick's desire for knowledge to learn more of what the hell is going on, like in this space that he is occupying. And he's still doing that. It's just in a different way.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's what he's attempting to do.
You kind of blew my mind a little bit. So later on, we see Oakley get on the beach, and I don't know if you can answer this, but how?
He does some not great things. So like for him to do that, he must be in a state where he is either dead or near dead. Okay. And that's what he's willing to do to go save Mac. The problem is Mac is alive. So it's kind of like, but I will, that will be alluded upon about like what he does. But I'll put it this way. He doesn't do it by himself, like the way that he's able to get there. Okay. So, yeah.
Well, a little less dark there then.
Yeah. So, before the Mafia, yes. Yes. Will it depend on how the Raiders organization does? No. So
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this one as well, but why is the blood demon on the beach?
I'll put that together. It's fine. Finn Oakley visits the blood demon. Like Finn Oakley literally gets the blood demon, and that's how he makes it to the beach. Now,
I probably could put that together.
Yeah. So like that's how he winds up getting in that place. Because he thinks that Mac is now again. Finn Oakley doesn't call it the beach or anything like that. That's like kind of like our outsider term that we call it. He thinks it's like Davy Jones's locker, right? Because like he's speaking like pirate code. So he basically wants to go there to see Mac. And so he doesn't say like, oh, I want to go see Mac. He's like, I want to go to this place. And Blood Demon's like, okay, like you're gonna go there. And so that's why Blood Demon is there.
Cool.
But the Blood Demon is going to be playing a role going forward, because as I alluded to, it's very difficult to get off that beach.
Yes.
If only there was something there that could grant wishes.
Oh no, here he is.
There he is.
Yeah. So the West Saga takes place, and we also know that there's a lot of storylines that are overlapping at this point with the other series. Around what time during the West Saga does the Coach Season 3 finale take place?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So there's a couple of things here. One, Linda's dead before Coach Season 3, right? So like that's important too. So like that happens for like that's why it's cold, like the whole 9 yards. Yes. So the finale, I always looked at it. I think I like mapped it. I was like week 8 to like 10. It was like one of those like where there's going to be like their overlap. There is a certain moment I think I have in the script where I literally wrote it down. But yeah, you're looking like right around like when the merge was like about to occur. Like that's when things start to like they're running on the same timeline now. Maybe Janine. He's a dentist.
He's a dentist, Janine.
He's a dentist. I'm so excited for the North. It's like 2 years away, but I'm so excited.
No, I'm excited for it too. No pressure. No pressure.
No,
but so is it a coincidence that the merge happened at the same time then as the
No.
Okay.
So the merge, again, I had some options for it, but no, I that wasn't pretty intentional. Like why I wanted the merge to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. So somebody asked if the Chiefs did not have their early season struggles and they didn't go 3-4 at the very beginning of the season, would Lenny have been the villain instead of Lewis, or was it always going to be Lewis?
That's a great question. Lenny, I don't know if I was going to have him as a villain per se, but he was going to be. I think I mentioned this in a stream that there was an old improv game that I used to play called Two Line, in which you have a boss. It's played by 3 people. You have a boss character, and then you have 2 workers, and it can be anywhere. 2 workers, and they can only say 2 lines. They can say a statement and a question, and that's all they can say. The only person who can say anything is the boss, and it's basically the boss gets so frustrated to the point where like he quits, kills them, whatever, right? Like that's how the scene. That's basically how I described Lenny. Like he was going to be the boss, in which like, but everybody hated him and like did not respect him and like did not like him, and you see glimpses of that too, because like you see how Breck right interacts with Lenny for a while, and like Lenny like actually lets him know like, hey, we're pretty similar actually, like we both won a Super Bowl, like people didn't like us for a while. So yeah, like that is that was originally like my plans for Lenny, but that's what I mean, like the characters can change so rapidly depending on their season. I mean, like I'll be honest, like Diego, so many chances. I wrote out so many storylines for Diego. I was like, yes, like this is going to happen. He's finally going to win. He's going to do something. And then the Chargers fell flat on their face and they sucked and they didn't do anything. And I was like, I don't got anything for you then, buddy. Like at some point, like there's a couple characters that need to take a back seat. And like that was unfortunately going to be Diego. So yes. Yes. That Yinzer is going to be the character for the North. Yes. Yes.
So then I actually have one final question written down that hasn't not been answered yet. So this is from the community as well. If Eugene, would Eugene have survived if the Cardinals like did really well in the playoffs or made the Super Bowl?
Would he have survived? Yeah, he would have survived longer, but like his story was going to end because yeah, it was going to end in the near future. In the finale, then he probably would have just, it would have been, I think, a very similar outcome.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, sorry. Rest in peace. That's all my questions.
You did it.
Does anybody in the chat have anything that they would like answered by either of us?
Christian, yes. The Browns, yes, it will be the dentist. Yes, it will be the dentist. The dentist will be the main character for the Browns in the North. Yes, that's what I mean. Of like the guys you've seen before don't necessarily like correlate with like the North characters and coach. So like yeah. As I said before, like the end game you're gonna start to see form in Coach Season 4, because the plan as of right this second is Coach Season 4, then it's gonna be the South, Coach Season 5, then it's the North, and then Coach Season 6, and that's it. Like that's gonna be like book. And again, like that doesn't mean like there won't be any other stories or anything like that, but there is a end that like is in mind, because I don't want it to be like, okay, well, like it's just gonna keep on going, blah, blah, blah. Like because again, the way that it's already structured, the way that the reason I like it so much, because you could watch the East, you could watch the West, and be contained in its own stories. If you watched both, then like you get to see some overlap, and I think that's really cool. You're gonna see overlap in the South. You're gonna see overlap in the North. So like every time that these sagas happen, you're going to start to see more and more overlap, because that's what the NFL is, right? It's a whole bunch of overlap, and it's basically telling like basically a 6-year story.
Yeah.
So that's the
lore
plan.
will end. The lore will end someday.
Yeah, and again, I'm just saying like in its form it will. Because I think it's just, I don't want it to go on like forever. Like again, will you see in 10 years, will you see a Wildflower? Probably. Again, like maybe if he's alive. Like we'll see. Like, you'll see other characters. Like it doesn't mean that their stories are like definitively over, but like with Coach, I want to have an end on it. Like I want Coach to be like, this is the story that I have wanted to tell. I'm going to tell this story. It has gotten there's a lot more in it now because like you could have, I mean, you look at season 3, Tom's in it for like one episode. Like Tom is in it for one episode. And I loved that. Because he wasn't the main character that season. Like it wasn't really that. So like you're gonna start to see like you'll see Lewis, you'll see Finn, you'll see Frederick, like they will be in Coach season 4, because there's a lot to be resolved there. And then like there still is that baseline story of Tom, and what he's going through and like what makes it Coach. And again, I know I've said this before, like, but like Coach, people have always asked, like, well, who is Coach? So the Coach is like these emotions that we're talking about, whether it is depression, whether it is love, or whether it's joy, what have you. They're the ones that are like coaching you. They're the ones that are like taking charge, and they're the ones that are like leading you through life. They're coaching you through life. And sometimes those could be good and sometimes those could be bad. I mean, like people always ask too, and like this is a season 1 question, like, why is Tome doing what he's doing? Because it seems like it's manipulative. Like it doesn't seem like it's a really nice thing to do, but it's coming from a good place because like Tom could love more than one thing. Like Tom could love to like, the Green Bay Packers. Like Tom could love all of this stuff. It's funny because it's like supposed to be like a practical joke, but it's also like, him setting time for that. And this is where you see, and that's why I say like the inside can impact the outside. Like you see shades of ambition in season 1. And that's alluded to again in season 3. Like when he's staying here and wind up eating dinner by himself, like that's ambition. Like that's like forcing those to say, like you start to see like, okay, like that's where these feelings are going to start to come out a little bit more. So that's what that is. That's it. Tom's explanation is so deep. I can see Wildflower.
Yep. Pretty much.
Was Lewis always going to be a follower of Chamas? Yes. Yes. That was planned from the beginning. That was definitely planned. End up being the conscious or find a way to the real world. Great question. Well, those are 2 very different questions. I will say, again, it is possible for characters to make it out into the real world. I'm not saying it'd be a great thing, but it is possible.
Yeah, it can happen.
I'm just saying, like, if Tom just dies and it's just Tome and Wildflower running the things, just getting high and talking about love, like, I'm okay with that. Like, that's not, it'd be like the worst ending. You sign Wildflower to a long-term deal. Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that brings up a question though. Like, if Tom the character dies, does it all just go away?
It's a great question. So does it all like disappear? In a way, yes. Let me put it this way: if there's nothing on the outside, or if there's no one on the outside, and then Tom also dies, then it's done.
Oh, okay.
Because then there's nothing left.
Yeah.
So as long as there's something that's in control, it's good. Shouldn't say it's good. It will be sustainable.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean that would be really bad. That would be real bad. Real big consequences from that. Wildflower's parents. So like again, Wildflower's parents. Yeah. So that's so the son, William and Margaret are the parents. So you meet William and Margaret. William's the tree and Margaret's the stump that's in the yard. And they're referenced, and you find out that it's the parents, or at least it's heavily alluded to at the end of the East Saga, in which Wildflower is like, "Oh, they're all together now." So what happens is William, again, like they go off and they are looking for Bruce. There's a storm, and then a tree falls and winds up killing them both. And Wildflower basically takes the blame for that. And but again, William is Eugene's son. So
there was also a moment that I completely forgot about where Eugene is talking to Jerry and he mistakenly calls him Willie. Yeah. And like my heart just dropped. I was like, oh, that's it. And then he kind of just freaks out a little bit. And it's just like, it's also just alluding to the whole fact that Eugene doesn't know what happened. And he's not going to know for a few more weeks. So that's just another layer of tragedy that's just added on.
Yes, exactly. So he freaks out because he calls him Willie, which is like, William, and, like that was his kid's name. So like and then he disappeared. So like, that's when he like loses it because he starts to freak out a bit. So, yeah. Yep. That's plus there's a lot of little Easter eggs that are planted throughout the entire series. Most can't hurt themselves, but Chama's afraid of Wildflower and gets shot by Danny in season 3 finale. Yeah, they can't be killed. They can't be killed by each other. So again, you can get like wounded and all that great stuff. But yeah, Chama's afraid of Wildflower too because again, Wildflower is different. Wildflower is different than Diego. Wildflower is different than Gus. Wildflower is different from Rocky even. Because again, as they start to evolve, things can change. And I think this was asked at one point. It wasn't during this stream, but people are asking like, can they become emotions? And yeah, they could. Theoretically, they could. So yeah, that's that. Yes. So can they feel fear? That's a great question. I will put it this way. When there is a vacuum, something will most likely rush to fill it. So that's what I'll say about that.
I'm gonna keep quiet on that one for a little bit.
That's what I'll say about that. So yeah.
Something clicked, but I'm not gonna say it yet. The pointy stick. Of course. I just figured out a question I want to ask and I forgot. Has there ever been an Easter egg in an episode where nobody's like found it and like nobody understood what it is and you were thinking that somebody could have found it?
Oh yeah. I mean, like there's like sometimes there's like really minuscule stuff. Like for a while, unfortunately I broke it. Like not having the Brett Favre signed picture there meant that you were in Tom's head. Like there's like that kind of like there was some stuff of like clothes that I wore. There was some stuff that there was like little pieces of dialogue. I'm trying to like remember off the top of my head and stuff. But yeah, there's lots of like little tidbits that it's not even like, oh my God, that's mind blowing, but it's just a matter of like the detail as to why things were said the way they were said. The way that Wildflower looks at Lewis and like he doesn't like it. The fact that Lewis says a line that is very similar from Chamas talking to Tom during the night episode, talking about being able to run. Like that stuff. Like there's like definitely some like little things that are there. And I don't think it's necessarily like huge mind-blowing stuff, but yeah, and there's like little Easter eggs. I don't like anticipate anyone notice unless you're like really like damn. Yeah, and some people like caught that stuff. So there you go.
Moltres, probably.
Ooh. Okay.
Dean Balor. And I feel like Easter eggs and all that. I feel like we should bring this up. So there is a massive Easter egg in Coach Season 3, Episode 2. Before we even find out who Ambition is, it's actually kind of alluded to in this episode if you look at the solitaire cards that Bruce is playing with.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a night trying to figure that one out.
That was a time.
If you go by blackjack rules and you count out the numbers of those cards and you happen to combine some of them together and then relate it to which number lines up with which letter in the alphabet, you can spell out ambit. So then if you just know enough, it can spell out ambition. Yeah,
people were really upset about that for a while because they're like, what does this mean? So the cards literally like one was like an A, then M, like combined it was like M and then B, I, T. Yeah. So yeah.
That was a night trying to figure that one out.
Yep. You're gonna film some of the scenery from Current House. Don't you worry, that'll be handled. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Yep. 100%. So I think we did good. I mean, we did a 2-hour lore stream.
Oh, jeez. Well, I need dinner.
Same. But, folks, first of all, Kirsten, LQ, appreciate you running point on this on the lore stream. I know that this will help out a lot of people and hopefully make some sense of things. Lore is deep, my friends. The lore is deep. So you can go and follow LQ, link in the description. Go follow that Twitters. But folks, I'll be back at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for a little Friday night Q&A, of course. So we'll see you soon. LQ, any final words?
Just a big shout out to the community. Like, you guys are a big reason why I'm here, and thank you for submitting so many amazing questions. I actually had a lot of fun going through them and making sure that I could answer as many as possible. And if anybody else has any questions, just let me know. I mean, I can try to answer them the best I can because I might know my stuff, I might not. I don't know. It's a toss-up.
We're all just here. On Han,
Yeah.
real quick, Trevor, based on the Cards fan being a progenitor of sorts of the East cast, it's not random. No, because the Cardinal, that's another Easter egg. The Cardinals used to be in the East. Like, they were in the East Division. So it makes actually a lot of sense that he winds up being, like, the oldest one there. And, like, one of the reasons why a lot of the family spawns off from that. Because for quite some time, they were hanging out in the East. But folks, appreciate you all. LQ, appreciate you. We'll see you at 7:30 Eastern for a little Friday Night Q&A. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. That's LQ. And as always, go Pack, go. The lore is so deep.